All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and demystify the defensive midfielder. Honestly, it's often the most misunderstood and underappreciated role on the entire football pitch. For decades, the spotlight has heavily favored the goal scorers, the dazzling wingers, the creative number 10s. But if you strip away all that flashiness and look at the pure functional core of any elite football team, you're going to find a solitary figure anchoring the whole shebang. So today, we're going to break down exactly why the defensive midfielder is the true heartbeat of the beautiful game, how the role actually works in practice, and the real-life players who completely define it. Now, what's really fascinating here is how perfectly Pep Guardiola captures the paradox of this position. When he was talking about the legendary Spanish midfielder Sergio Busquets, he highlighted this fundamental truth. The absolute best defensive midfielders are practically invisible to the casual observer, yet they control absolutely everything. They aren't always making these 40-yard sprints or scoring top corner volleys. Instead, they're manipulating space, dictating the tempo, and orchestrating the entire flow of the match right from the shadows. To really understand how we got to this level of tactical sophistication, we kind of need to trace the role back to a major turning point.
Section 1. The Unseen Heart. Let's look at the genesis of the modern defensive midfielder. So, stepping back into the early 2000s, the crucial point is that French international Claude Makélélé was so incredibly efficient at keeping his calm and breaking down plays at Real Madrid and later Chelsea that this specific position was literally named after him. He wasn't your traditional bone-crunching, slide-tackling enforcer. Makélélé was just simple, hyper-efficient, and had an otherworldly positional sense. When Real Madrid's attacking stars like Zidane, Figo, and Roberto Carlos bombed forward, Makélélé just stayed behind. He locked up shop. He was this one-man defensive shield who perfectly understood that his absolute discipline gave the creatives the freedom to go and actually win games.
And the contrast between these two quotes brilliantly illustrates the divide in how the game is understood. When Makélélé left Real Madrid for Chelsea, club president Florentino Perez infamously dismissed him, citing his lack of speed, average technique, and sideways passing. He basically just saw a player with limited attacking flair. But Zinedine Zidane, an absolute icon of the sport, he was devastated. Zidane recognized Makélélé as the absolute engine of the team. He famously asked, "Why would you put another layer of gold paint on the Bentley if you're throwing away the entire engine?" And you know what? Zidane was spot on. Makélélé went to the Premier League, thrived under Jose Mourinho, and revolutionized English football. He proved once and for all that stopping the opposition is just as much of an art form as scoring against them.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a DM. Let's see how this role actually works on a cognitive level.
The tactilized tactical methodology reveals something kind of mind-blowing. While a defensive midfielder might technically have fewer core tactical fundamentals compared to, say, a winger, the complexity of their specific tasks is just off the charts. Why? Because the defensive midfielder operates in a 360-degree environment. Attackers and midfielders can press you from literally any angle. To survive in that zone, you essentially need the mental processing speed of a supercomputer. It's a cognitively exhausting role where you have to constantly process a rapidly shifting geometry of players all around you.
You might watch a match and just see a simple sideways pass, but this sequence breaks down the rapid, multi-step mental process that legendary players execute in literally a fraction of a second. First, it starts with continuous head checks. You're scanning over both shoulders constantly to map the pitch, which is a total hallmark of greats like Xavi and Busquets. Next up is body positioning. If a DM receives the ball facing their own goal, that's a massive trigger for the opposition to press. So they have to receive the ball on the half-turn, shielding it while keeping the whole field in view. And finally, execution, winning the duel, making the tackle, or firing off a line-breaking progressive pass. It's an incredible symphony of mind and body, and it happens in the blink of an eye.
Section 3. The Shield. Let's look at Casemiro for a real-world example of this impact.
I absolutely love these numbers because they mathematically prove the steel a defensive midfielder brings to a chaotic system. When Erik ten Hag brought Casemiro to Manchester United, the transformation was literally night and day. Just look at the data here. Without Casemiro, United were facing almost 16 shots a game. With him, that plummeted down to 9. Even more telling, Manchester United nearly halved their expected goals against, dropping from about 1.6 to 0.8, simply by having Casemiro sit in front of and protect the back four. It's just hard numerical proof that a world-class DM drastically reduces the opponent's ability to create dangerous chances.
Operating almost exclusively in that central corridor right between both penalty boxes, Casemiro used his wealth of Champions League experience to just dominate. I mean, he instantly topped every single major defensive metric for his team per 90 minutes. Whether we're talking ball recoveries, possession won, interceptions, or tackles won, he was everywhere defensively. He acts as this perfect anchor. When he needs to step out and win the ball, he does it, but his elite positional discipline means he's very rarely drawn out of position unnecessarily.
Which brings us to Section 4, controllers versus destroyers, because not all defensive midfielders are the same.
So we have a really fascinating comparison that's heavily debated in football circles right now. Spain and Manchester City's Rodri versus England and Arsenal's Declan Rice. Observers often note that Rice is a phenomenal athlete, an elite ball carrier who kind of plays the Cape Crusader role. He puts out fires with incredible physicality, making those dramatic highlight reel crunching tackles. But Rodri is what we call a controller. He operates as a proactive pivot. He doesn't have to rely on last-ditch heroics because he's quite literally always several mental steps ahead. He is the man behind the joystick, dictating the tempo and suffocating the opposition through completely flawless positioning and possession. And you know, this quote perfectly captures Rodri's whole vibe. While some fans might be drawn to the dramatic Hollywood passes or desperate sliding tackles, Rodri's elite scanning and perfect weight of touch make the incredibly complex task of retaining possession under extreme pressure look completely effortless. Seriously, he's the reason his teams can just camp outside an opponent's penalty box for 80 minutes without getting exposed on the counterattack. It is a subtle difference in style, but that's exactly the fine margin that separates a great elite midfielder from a truly generation-defining one.
Section 5, the next generation. Knowing all these incredible demands, who's actually next in line?
Well, let's dive into some scouting reports. And to do this, we're actually looking at the virtual world of EFC 26. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a video game, right? But EA's database meticulously tracks and mirrors real-world scouting networks to identify the highest potential real-world teenagers. It gives us a genuinely fantastic, data-driven window into the specific profiles that professional academies are molding right now to become the defensive midfielders of tomorrow.
Just looking at the data, you can see the real-life players defining the future of the position. You've got Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace, who totally embodies that controller archetype with his elite, both-footed passing vision, just wrapping these gorgeous line-breaking passes right into the feet of attackers. Then there's Carlos Baleba at Brighton, who represents the modern physical powerhouse, incredibly aggressive when carrying the ball and breaking up play. And you also have Djorthy Mukio at Ajax, this versatile Swiss Army knife talent who can play across the defense and midfield. That really reflects the modern demand for ultimate tactical flexibility.
Plus 20. That number right there is the massive potential rating growth projected for Anderlecht's 6'4" prospect, Nathan Decat. It just goes to show how much raw, athletic, and technical potential is currently being developed in academies across Europe. Teams are basically looking for unicorns, players who have the towering physicality to chop down counterattacks, but also the jaw-dropping passing range to instantly launch one of their own in the exact same breath.
We've seen this role completely transformed from the pure defensive stopper in the Makelele mold into the hyper-aware, tempo-dictating joystick that is Rodri. As tactical demands continue to increase and as high pressing becomes even more intense, you really have to wonder, will the next generation become even more specialized? Or is the ultimate flawless defensive midfielder a perfect hybrid of physical dominance and mental supremacy yet to even be invented? That's really the big question you should take away from this explainer today. The engine room literally never stops evolving. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you in the next one.